Hello, and on this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club, we're going to be looking at how you can make your business 10 times greater. What you can do to help your business grow, maybe have a bit more fun and do more good in the world. So what I'm proposing is that Claire and I are going to just discuss a few different ideas that we've got in terms of how we can make our businesses better. It's not going to necessarily work for everyone, but the themes are quite general, so I think that we can sort of all take something away from this. How are you doing, Claire?
I'm good, thanks, Ben.
Okay, should we jump straight onto the first one? And this idea is quite relevant because it's the new year we're recording this in. We're recording in January 2023. And often when people are starting a new year, they're thinking about resolutions, whether that's personally or for the business, and they're thinking ahead, they're planning what are they going to do. And this is the first time I'm using this idea. So we're all sort of going on this journey together, but I have been following, I've never really liked the idea of resolutions because they're about having a definitive goal that you're going to achieve. And when you don't, you're a failure. Well, the idea we're going to be looking at is the idea of having a theme, for whether it's having a theme for the year or having a theme for each quarter. And the idea of a theme comes from a podcast called Cortex, and specifically a person on that podcast called CGP Grey. And he's been using the idea of themes for a number of years. And he believes that by having a theme, not only do you not get to the end of the year and think, well, I failed with that particular resolution that I've had, but that it actually having a theme changes the way you think. So if you want to know more specifically about it, he's got a website. Let me see if I can pull it up here for us to go through, called themesystem.com, where he's actually selling a journal for it. Skip past that, and there is a little video that explains what a yearly theme is about. But let's just explore that from our perspective. So for me, what I take away from this is that a theme is about an anchor for your thinking for the next year or quarter, depending on how you're looking at it. And it's about when you come across decisions, you can use that theme as a way of helping you decide what the best path is. There's no real right or wrong, so you shouldn't feel that you've failed. It's very flexible. And I think that's quite important, either personally or for a business. You don't want to constantly feel like you're failing, like you've set these huge, ambitious goals, which you are just going to fail at all the time. So I'm just going to say one more thing, then I'll get your opinion on it, Claire. So I really like the idea of this. And as I said, I've never really looked at resolutions, really. They've never really worked for me. And I've always had ideas and things I'd like to do. But the idea of a theme grabs me. And for me, the theme I've got is health. Health personally. Now you think, how's it's going to affect business? Well, for me, if I am a healthier person, either in mind or physically, I am going to hopefully be able to think more clearly and be able to work more effectively on behalf of the business, rather Inventive, or clients. So by being a healthier person, I think that that's going to be able to achieve that. There's also a way of looking at it from a business perspective, that if you are making decisions about what is going to help improve your health, then I think that's going to be healthy for the business, because you certainly don't want to be working long hours. That's not going to be good for your health. Or taking on projects you're not going to enjoy. That's not going to be good for your health. But equally, if you are working productively and doing work that you enjoy, that's going to come out in the work, and that's going to benefit your clients, and it's going to benefit your business and hopefully profit. So what do you think about the idea of a theme, Claire?
Well, I have to admit, initially, I really sort of struggled with the concept. I think I found it a little bit woolly and sort of missing direction if you're sort of wanting a set goal. And I think that's partly because I was misinterpreting the point of the theme. Whereas I guess sort of stepping back and kind of saying it in a slightly different way, I see it as having an overall goal and sort of bite-sizing those steps to sort of head towards that goal. So it's not having one set goal, it's having lots of miniature ones throughout the year that navigate towards the wider picture. So with that understanding, I think I get the idea of themes. Otherwise, it's much more a holistic approach, I think. I'm definitely not somebody that sort of sets a resolution and sort of sticks to stone, because life doesn't work in that way. So I think if you can kind of have a beacon that you're sort of aiming towards and sort of make your meandering path towards it. So I think sort of pulling back to what you were saying about the kind of the key message, or the key goal, is every time you make a decision, it's, are you making that one step forward towards that beacon?
Yeah, exactly. And something CGP Grey pulls out in his explainer video is that if you have your theme, that theme is used to look at the world, look at decisions, look at what you have to do, the work you have to do in life and in work, and that helps you make decisions to that end, and hopefully that will move you towards it. And unlike a resolution, which if you reach that resolution, well, what do you do now? So if your resolution was to lose weight by a certain amount, or to achieve a goal in work, like a certain profit goal or turnover goal, when you hit it, what happens? Is that good? Do you have another goal after that? If you don't hit it, do you feel bad? Does your team feel bad? What should you do about it? With a theme, it not only helps your thinking, but it's ongoing. It can almost never end if it's the right sort of theme. You can always improve. You can always develop. And I want to pick up on the word meander that you used there. I think it's a really good way of looking at working towards something, because we don't know the future. We can not predict. We can make a guess about what we want to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen. And we don't know if there's going to be better opportunities for us in the future. And so why be so dogged about a particular thing we want to achieve? Having a theme allows us to be moving along a path towards that theme. And then when we have an opportunity, we are more free to be able to take that, as long as it's still aligning with our theme. And also, the theme doesn't have to be so strict. It's not about just personal health. It can be the health of a business. What's the benefit? What's a healthy business? A healthy business that has cash flow. It's not having a constant turnover of customers or employees. People have there's a good culture in the business. So I think health can apply in lots of different ways, but health doesn't need to be your theme. Pick a theme that works for you. So I really like the idea of it, and I like the idea because it gives me freedom more than anything else. Do you have a theme? If you had a theme, Claire, do you have one, and would you share it?
I think my overall theme in life is to work less. So to kind of smarter with my working. So that is a goal that I'm working towards. But it's also, I think, when you have that goal, sometimes achieving it can kind of create a lot of uncertainty, because you have to make changes and you have to make some sort of decisions sometimes. So I think it's about having faith within that journey. We were sort of discussing it earlier, where there's no clear-cut path, and I think that's okay. So you've just got to wander through and have that faith that each step you make forward will get you towards your overall goal.
Oh, I mean, faith, absolutely, and not in a religious context, but it's faith that you're on the right path and you will achieve the right ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in some ways there's a smartness to not being worried about hitting a specific goal and saying, like, these are things I'd like to achieve. I know I will get there. I will land on my feet. And I think some people do want that absolute certainty. And you know what? You can't give it
Yeah.
to them. There's so many
No.
people who say, when is this going to be delivered? How am I, am I going to get my money back from it?
Yeah.
Is this, am I going to get a lot of conversions? You know what? I don't know. I can
Well,
only
change
guess.
is scary. And
Yeah.
I think every human struggles with it, because we're creatures of habit. So I think one of the key things, which was something I think you brought up before, was don't do the same thing. So if you had a goal last year, why try and repeat the same goal? So this, I guess, broadens that umbrella of different avenues that you can go down. So, and you will still end up in the same place,
Yeah,
potentially.
absolutely. Yeah, it's, as I said, I haven't tried this thinking of it specifically in this way before, but it's along the lines of how I think anyway. So I'm just adding a bit more structure to it. So give it a go, see what happens. Should we move on to the next sort of concept in terms of making a business better?
Yeah.
And I think for me, is less marketing BS. And I'm specifically thinking about this in the context of communicating with the market. So whether it be social media, advertising, maybe even on the sales call, I think in terms of businesses, we don't see our customers as people. We kind of see them as an abstract, and we sell to and communicate with this audience, as we call them, over here, who act in a certain way. And I think that distances ourselves. That adds a lot of distance between us, the product, and the people who we're hoping will buy that product. And I think we've lost a lot of humanity in terms of how we approach people. And I think some of the nicest businesses that I see in their marketing, they look and they sell the fun, the humanity of their product, rather than selling to what they think this audience may want. And I think that's one thing we can do as a great business in terms of marketing, is we can just be more ourselves. Or if you've got multiple people in the company, you can bring those people out, because they're the real assets of a business.
Well, I think it always sort of boils back to people invest in people. So if you can sort of be more remarkable and memorable, I think that's the thing, by creating those connections, getting people to invest in a person or a process and understanding and sort of buying in to people or a company or that personality of a company, you're going to be remembered, which makes you more remarkable. It kind of all kind of links together to a lot of the other sort of key messages we've sort of thrown out across the year. So yeah, I think also it's quite easy to hide behind marketing jargon, but what does it actually mean? A lot of it. I think I've got to the point where I'm quite kind of jaded. I'm quite clear and concise on how I want to speak and communicate with people. And when I'm sort of as a receiver of jargon and waffle, I'm not interested. I shut down. I'd sooner kind of connect and engage with somebody willing to have a conversation with me.
Yeah, exactly. I think that links in with my thoughts on people just posting the same rubbish online. Either the same stuff that they've been posting as a business because, well, it's been working. Maybe it's been working. It hasn't been detrimental to them, but also it's the same as everyone else. And if you do the same as everyone else, you're just not going to be seen. There's just no point. You're literally adding more crap to the internet. And we don't like that. People don't like that.
Well, we
It's
don't have
not a
time
nice thing to receive.
No. And I think, that it's getting less and less how quickly you can attract someone's attention. I think it's less than 3 seconds now. If so, how are you going to be different? How are you going to sort of catch their eye if you're sort of repeating what everybody else is throwing out, or just sharing the same content all the time?
Yeah, it's got to tap into what we care about, and things that actually help us achieve goals, not just stuff our animal instinct might desire, like sweet things or greasy food. We might desire that. Our bodies might desire that for various historic reasons, but it's not good for us to have. Actually, there's a lot of things that we need and crave that are really good for our bodies, and I think, or mentally. And I think if we can focus more on that, more on the joy, the fun, the connection, a real connection that people have between others, and that products can help do that. There are various products or services that can actually truly help do that, where you can actually have fun, where they actually do truly give connection. If we can focus more on that and not try to artificially find those elements, I think we'll have an easier time of marketing because it will come more naturally. We'll be developing products that will have marketing built into them because they've got that fun, they've got that connection built right into them. And we're not going to be posting the same crap as everyone else because we're going to be thinking differently. And hopefully it's just going to be more fun, I think, rather than just thinking, well, this is our audience, this is how we segment it. Let's put a plan together so we can get as many people as possible to click, and then a certain percentage of them might buy the product. Well, that's no fun, is it? I mean, yeah, it can work, but it's no fun.
I think it's important to just keep having different approaches to selling your product, or promoting your company. So yeah, I think it's something that's often an afterthought, and people are just reacting and needing to put something out there, where it's better to do, sort of have a less is more approach if you don't have the time to kind of sort of put the energy into it, or maybe just do a little bit less and find that time to make sure it's really good quality and rich for your customer, because I'm sure they'd appreciate that than a blanket of nondescript content that they won't even bother to read or remember.
Exactly. They won't bother to read it. And I'll just sort of finish this segment by I can't remember the company, but they were like a content production company, and that in itself is, just producing content is not necessarily what we want to do more of in the world. However, they had a focus which I really liked, and it wasn't to produce lots of social posts, blog posts, content for their company. Their focus was to produce a really good piece of work that was interesting and useful. So it's an article, for example, that they would put onto a website that was long, detailed, interesting, and useful. And then they would promote that same article and make sure as many people who would find that useful saw it. And it meant that, yes, they weren't producing loads of content on a regular basis. They would produce one article, and then they would make sure people see that. Then they would market that article. And it meant that they could focus on doing really good work, rather than just focusing on the commitment, saying, yeah, we're going to put lots of posts out and hopefully some of them will hit. And I really like that approach to saying, no, let's find something that people are interested in and keep hammering back on that, keep honing that, rather than trying to create new all the time. Another thing that I think is really important to having a great business and making it work better is not to measure everything, is just to measure the right things and focus on things where you can actually make an impact. It's so easy to measure anything nowadays. Even personally, we can measure everything about ourselves. And in a business, it's even worse. Certainly in marketing, there's so many different analytics packages that you can get to measure how people, or visitors, as they're called, work on a website. How are they moving around? What are they clicking on? Are they bouncing off? Are they converting? Socially, how are people engaging? Are they commenting? Are they liking? Are they forwarding on to other people? What are they doing? Are they how are people moving throughout your marketing messaging? And then you've got business health in accounts. You've got turnover. A lot of people focus on turnover rather than maybe looking at profit, or maybe looking at new customers rather than just looking at existing customers, and keeping customers for longer rather than just looking at getting new customers. So I think people measure so much stuff, and they really drill into the detail of it. And there's so many amazing, frankly, amazing packages, including AI, that can help you drill into that data. But ultimately, almost what we're doing is we're creating jobs for ourselves, where we're just looking more and more at the data and letting the data drive our decisions, rather than having a gut feel about, certainly if we're thinking about communicating with other people, having a gut feel about what would work well for other people, and just measuring the things that are important to us that help us make a decision. Now, I don't know exactly what those are, because it's going to depend for different companies. But for me, if I was looking at an e-commerce company, it almost really doesn't matter about all the other activity they're doing, as long as they're doing activity and that generates conversions. So it doesn't matter what interactivity they're getting on social, but the fact they're doing social and that brings them conversions, that's good. Now, I know that a lot of people want to drill into, well, exactly which posts convert, or when I get engagement of a certain amount and so many comments, that will allow people to click through more. Yeah, that might happen. But if you write interesting things that people care about, then they're going to interact with it more. And you may not know that in advance, but you will know that, and you'll intuit it over time. And no amount of data, just looking at the raw numbers, is going to help. And to be honest, you spend so much time looking at the data rather than actually doing new and interesting things, that from my position anyway, I'm not a data scientist, but from my position, I don't find it a waste of time, but I do find it uses a lot of time that we could better spend elsewhere. So I think for me, a great company can spend less time measuring things and more time doing interesting things and using data to support that, but not to actually make the decision for you. Sorry, I went off on one there, Claire, but what do you think
Don't
about that?
worry. I think it's either one end of the spectrum or the other. So having worked with a sort of a variety of different clients, they're either very embedded in the data and almost sort of suffocating themselves because they're too busy sort of drilling down and kind of missing the point of what the data is there for, or they absolutely ignore it and do just do whatever they want and
Yeah.
don't even evaluate or kind of see how it's working or being received. So I think for me, there's a middle ground, and for your own individual business, it goes back to what's your overall theme, what's your goals for the year, what are you aiming to achieve with the output that you're putting out there. And if you can identify that, then follow a few set stats, and having like a regular monthly report where you can dip into it, and if there's some questions raised in that, then dive into the deeper data and start trying to work out why it's presenting in that way. So for me, it's finding that middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which do
yeah,
you think are the happier the companies?
uh, the ones that ignore it, I
Yeah.
think, because they're just merrily doing what they want. But I just think then you're kind of losing opportunities, and you're kind of missing the point usually.
Yeah, there's definitely a benefit to looking at things. I think sometimes you do get, I think people hide behind data and make decisions based on it because they don't want to be called out on making the wrong decision. And I think it comes back to what we said before. We've just got to put one foot in front of the other and make decisions,
Yeah.
and
Well, it's
not worry about it.
it's a great way to enforce change. So a client I've been working with, they before did very product focused content, and I'm a big advocate for people sell and invest in people. So
Hmm.
I wanted to make it more personalized. So I created a campaign. I then presented the stats and the data based on moving image and people focused content, and was able to identify and show the impact that that was having. So then it could encourage that change, and I got the relevant people on board to then support that. Actually going forward, this is something that they need to sort of interweave into their current social media. So it kind of it can work in that way, so it can help prove the change that needs to be done.
Yeah. Sometimes it's more difficult than that, though. I'm working with another client where it's been very hard to prove the effectiveness of some of what we've been doing. Yeah, sure, we can look at numbers going up, but does that change the amount of sales? They have a very long sales cycle, so it's really difficult to impact that. But I know that we have had impact on their sales because over the years we've been working with them, one of the objectives they had is to sort of smooth out their turnover rather than coming at one period of the year. Wanted to smooth that out so they weren't having these sort of drought periods. We've done that because we have enabled them to have a sort of smoother marketing campaign over the year, which has taken multiple years to roll into working, but it works. And we haven't had to measure that apart from looking at the number of leads and successful orders that come in. And that's all we've needed to measure. We've been trying there's lots of different avenues and sources, and they all play their part because it's such a long sales cycle. No one of them is actually driving all of the conversions. They're all part of that sort of that sales funnel. So, we could measure how effective the social campaigns were, or how many clicks are coming in from Google search, or how their keyword positions are improving. I mean, that's something we do measure and we do look at it, but I'm not too worried about it overall if there's little blips. All I'm actually worried about is the longer term. Are they getting more meaningful conversations with potential customers that convert to sales? Yes, they are. And we can see that that's spreading throughout the year. So sometimes the data is useful to make little decisions, but overall we shouldn't worry about it too much, because as long as we're looking at the right things, for me anyway. It's difficult to get a lot of customers around to that though.
Yeah.
That way of thinking. So not quite last, but a big thing I wanted to talk about, and this certainly is important going forward and will become more important, is to reduce our environmental impact. And I would say this from a business perspective and personally, but let's think more business here. Why do we need to do this? Well, climate change. Whether you believe in it or not doesn't really matter. Think climate change is happening. Whether you believe it's humans impacting on that or not, it really doesn't matter, because a lot of the ways of mitigating and reducing the carbon we're putting into the atmosphere will actually benefit your company if you do them, I believe. Some may be harder for others. Certainly companies who rely on selling carbon intensive products like petroleum or plastic, it's going to be difficult for them to move forward with that without changing what they're doing wholesale. But for most businesses are able to make significant or small changes that will have a massive impact. I will say that probably one of the biggest impacts is to actually encourage government to do the right thing, because through strict legislation, that actually forces businesses or sets a structure for businesses to change over time. But while we're doing that, I think one of the key things is to encourage people to talk about it and look at ways that we can improve what we're doing. And I think if businesses look at it in two lenses, if they want, and one of them is marketing. So in terms of marketing, we can think about our customers are going to be looking for companies who are more environmentally responsible, ultimately. And if a customer is looking at choosing between two different companies, the company is more environmentally responsible is going to have an edge over the one who isn't. So just purely from a marketing perspective, it may give you an edge. It also gives you good stories to talk about. If we're coming back to marketing and being more human, if we are talking more about what we are doing to improve our environment and our society, which it all comes together, that gives us interesting things to talk about that isn't just the normal marketing BS that we're putting out there. So I think from a marketing perspective, it gives us more interesting human things to talk about. I think it will save us money as well. A lot of people think that being green, like it's the general idea, but reducing carbon is expensive. It's not. There are things you can do that will save you money over time, whether it's, just commonly people might think, well, changing their warehouse to use LED bulbs. Yes, it costs money to begin with, and there is a certain amount of waste in you doing that. But over time, you will start to have massive savings of cost and reduction in carbon in doing so. And ongoing into the future, you've got to make that change at some point. But it could be maybe buying new cars that are battery powered, or looking at reduction of travel and transport. What can we do to actually reduce that? Do we need to ask our employees to travel in every day? Maybe we can cut that down. Do we need to be shipping things around so much, or can we do that in bulk? Is there a way we can change our packaging? I know Apple has been doing this recently. They've been reducing down the packaging so they can fit more units in a shipping container. And in fact, rather than flying units of iPhones, they're shipping them instead. There are impacts, sure, to the whole life cycle of that product in terms of getting there, but they can be mitigated and ultimately will save them money, because it is cheaper to ship those units by sea than it is by air. So I think truly that if, regardless of a business's stance on whether humans are impacting the climate, there are things that we can do that will save businesses money and make a positive change to that, and be more and breed a sort of healthier society around the environment, which is more positive. So I think there's a lot of things businesses can do. And one of the key things we can do is we can keep talking about it to our customers, to our suppliers, and to our partners about what we're doing, what they're doing, and sharing those ideas.
And I think it's one way at the moment that you can really stand out from the crowd, if you're at the forefront of this and really trying to make a change and sharing that as part of your journey, to being greener, because if it's not within your mindset, it's definitely within your customers' mindset. People are becoming more aware and more supportive of, sort of having a greener approach. So to compare you with a company, of a similar, providing a similar product or service, they're more likely to win the business if they're greener at the moment, I would say, because it's definitely in the consumer's mindset as one of their features that they're looking for.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt. But then I don't run a multinational business who's very reliant on fossil fuels.
Mm.
And I can understand that is going to be difficult for them, really difficult. And when your business is focused on that, and there's a lot of cost to change, I can understand why you'd be resistant. I really do.
Mm.
But there are better and cheaper ways for us to use the Earth's resources that ultimately benefit us all and do not cost more.
But it goes back to themes. I think you can sort of have a bite-sized step into that journey. You're not going to be green overnight, and I think you can kind of meander your way towards that green beacon that you want to achieve. And it's, taking those steps, and even small steps at the moment have such a huge impact. And I think that was something from one of your talks earlier in the year about the carbon almanac.
A page for that. So yeah, this is the Carbon Almanac.
Yeah, sorry, Ben. So when they came on to talk about it, I think the key message that I got was if you did one thing, just one thing out of the book, and just change one thing in your daily routine, it has this massive ripple effect over time. I think if you apply that to yourself within your business and take one step at a time, you'd be surprised how much impact it would have overall.
I definitely recommend that book. I know we gave it away as a prize for one of our Christmas festive events. It's worth buying. I mean, basically, they any money profit made into it is fed back to good causes that support climate change and are helping with that. But what it does is it explains the problem and it explains how we can solve it, and talks about in a very matter-of-fact way, and the fact that don't worry about the fact that we're too late doing it. We're not. Really, we should have started back when we first knew about climate change and made impact on things. But there's lots of positive changes you can make in your personal life and your business life that will impact you. But I do believe that one of the key things you can do is actually just talk to other people about it. You want the conversation to be about what we can do to improve our lives, really, ultimately, not to worry about the problem. The problem is there. And it's a long way away, but it's always getting closer. And the way to deal with things, as you said, is bite-sized chunks. So this is a good place to look. And it goes along the lines of, I'm working with Adam from a company called Small 99 here. So he's doing lots of exciting things in this area in terms of, in general, in terms of getting people to talk more about reducing their carbon. In fact, I'm trying to work with him on this thing where I'm don't know when I'm going to be doing this, but at some point going to be running an online webinar about going through a carbon reduction plan, which is something we should all be looking at doing. And we've got ours, I think, on our website here. And I guess what I'm trying to say with this is, or one of the things Adam says is just to start doing things, just to start having a look at your impact, understanding what that is. How much carbon are we putting out? The sort of carbon emission is just helps us bring everything down to a number. We like measuring things, as we've mentioned before, and trying to understand, well, what are we putting out at the moment, and how can we mitigate that, either through paying to mitigate it, so carbon offset, paying someone else to plant trees or do good work to reduce that, to offset it, or actually reducing it. So I did that just as a little note, if people are going to find this useful. He recommended ecology as just a way of just starting to pay to offset your carbon. And the reason this is a benefit is it helps start a business understanding that there is a cost to emissions, which we're not paying for yet. We don't see the impact of it. It's coming, but we don't really see the impact of it. So, but there is a cost to it. There is a cost when there are emissions. And so by paying a company to offset that for you, a genuinely good company like Ecology is helping to do that. You pay them to do good work on your behalf, to plant trees or good work around the world where they can fund projects that sort of improving rainforests or reforestation, sorry, or renaturalization. But it doesn't mean you should stop just by paying. It's just a way of understanding that there is a cost to it. Now, I can either keep paying them or I can look to reduce that cost so my carbon comes down. The other thing you can do is look to understand what your carbon impact might be. So Small 99 has some things on their website about that, and I think he's developing a carbon audit, and certainly there's something in here about reducing carbon. But also in Ecology, they've got something that connects with Zero if you have it. So Zero, the account system. And what that will do is it will link those two together and allow you to, it basically tries to guesstimate the emissions of all your suppliers and the people you're working with to allow you to come up with a carbon figure. Oh, and also the amount of homework you do to come up with a carbon figure. So that's what I've been using. It doesn't matter if it's accurate. It really doesn't matter. It's just about starting somewhere and then looking to improve that over a period of time. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just making guesstimates, starting somewhere, talking to other people about it, getting suppliers involved, having those conversations, and just making it part of what we do. I think that's all we can do for now. And then as we go, we will understand more about it. We'll get better at it, and it will just become part of daily life. That's what I'm hoping. I just want to finally touch on this before we finish. It's just a little topic really, but I think it's important for building a great business that's 10 times better. It's about not micromanaging people really. It's about whoever you work with, whether they're employees, partners, or contractors, is to give the people or the company an ownership of a job. So rather than micromanaging them and feeding them little tasks to do, it's much more productive to give them a job to do which has an outcome, which has something that they can achieve, something they can do well at. This allows you, as an individual, more freedom because you can pull away from that and give more trust to them. You can delegate that wholeheartedly, but it also gives that person or that company, it gives them more freedom to do a better job for you. It's much harder. It's hard to do a good job for someone if they're just feeding you stuff as and when they need you to do it. It doesn't allow you to plan that work well. It doesn't allow you to maybe experiment with better ways of doing the same thing if you're just being told exactly what to do. So I do feel, and I struggle with this sometimes, but I do feel it's better ultimately to give someone an overall job with an objective, something you want people to achieve, rather than giving them a big list of tasks and saying, get on with it, and then checking up on them regularly. What do you think about this, Claire? How's
Well,
this
I think it motivates individuals to kind of step up because it's quite easy if you're being spoon-fed information and little tasks because you're not as invested. So if you're, sort of given a project or a task and given ownership of it, and I think as long as it's very clear about who's responsible, accountable, informed, and consulted about it, it makes them. It gives them, if you're responsible and accountable for something and it's not done, you're going to make sure it's done because you don't want to be at the end of the line, at the end of the project, and it's not happened. Be accountable and responsible for that because you don't want the telling off and you don't want the embarrassment. So I think it's always quite important to do that because people will start to shine and they get more creative and maybe they'll come up with better ideas than you initially
That's usually
thought.
what happens.
Which it gives them that sort of creativity, I suppose. But I would never completely step away. I think it's important to have sort of structure to it and have a nice touch points where they can come back and go, actually, this isn't quite going to plan, or it's slightly harder, or I've hit this brick wall. How do we get over that, around it? So it's sort of having nice touch points. And I think if you sort of build that trust and confidence in someone, they will come back to you. But I think to start with, you sort of nurture that relationship. But it's a fine line of being overbearing and overpowering, and sort of stepping back. I quite like stepping back. I feel that you can kind of really see somebody and kind of see how they gauge. I'll never let anybody sink, I'll step in and catch them. But I think it's important also sometimes for an individual to maybe sink a little bit. You're not going to let them bottom out, but I think it's important that they learn a lesson that maybe they needed to, have better time management, or, have a bit more sort of project planning involved. And in a safe environment, I think it's okay to sometimes fail, because then the next time you're going to make sure you're not going to fail, because you've learned. And I think it's important to kind of give that structure and help them learn where they could have, maybe done things slightly differently to sort of progress.
Yeah.
So yeah, completely. I think it's important to kind of give people ownership and a chance to sink or swim, but just have structure. I think that's the key thing. And I think sometimes people kind of overread that structure as kind of taking control.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to have some structure. It's not about delegating it and letting them fail. That's not the point. The point is you trust them to do a good job, but you want to support them in terms of doing that. And that does mean not being overbearing in the outcome. So it's like, yeah, I'll let you get on and do it, but when it comes to the end of the project, or the end of what you're doing, I'll go, no, that's not quite what I wanted. Sometimes you do have to be a bit more flexible in that, but that gives you more freedom.
But I
There's
think
a
with that point, Ben, I think you just have those touch points where you
yeah.
can maybe, you know, step in a little bit before the end and go, oh, could you just sort of steer this way a little bit? Or you kind of missed the point on that bit. So
Well, yeah,
it's,
I think you build in the regular touch points on both sides. So the person delegating the work has sort of a regular idea about when they're going to be appraised of things, and what they're hoping they're going to achieve, but maybe not being too optimistic, not being too having too higher expectation. But equally, the person or company who's taking the work on has regular communication and builds that in. And I think by having that regular communication, and we do it in, I think, all of our projects, we build in this regular communication, because if we are going in the wrong direction, we will find out sooner rather than later. It helps us make decisions because we're with the client for that contact point, but also it's a point where we can relay that information back about what we're doing, the ideas we had, and so on. And I think that works better. So it's a bit of give and take on both sides, but I do truly believe that if you can delegate a whole job to someone where they know the outcome, and they can develop that over a period of time, maybe even delegating a role to someone, you're going to get a much better outcome. It might be a bit wavy to begin with, but you're going to get a much better outcome. And as a person delegating, you're not still going to have that headache. You've moved it off your plate, and someone else can be responsible in a very positive way. So
yeah. And on the
what
receiving end of that, the individual that's been given that responsibility, it will grow their confidence.
yeah.
And they will thrive, I would say, rather because they're interested. They have to think and sort of solve things themselves. And if they're sort of mentally more stimulated, you're going to get more from them.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Well, I know it's always difficult when you're looking at things to that you can use to improve your business, and it's very easy to say these things will actually improve your business and make it work better. You know what? It's easy to pull those things out, but I don't know, without knowing who the business is, their background, their cash flow, what they're looking to achieve, whether those things will actually work for them. But I believe what we've suggested, these sort of concepts of having a theme, reducing your carbon, looking to delegate properly, and not measuring everything, and sort of just being more humanistic in your marketing. I think those general concepts can apply to lots of different businesses. How you use them is up to you, but I do think that they will help make your business better and greater, certainly in the coming year and hopefully into the future. So hopefully people will find that useful. Thanks, Claire, for your comments as well. I think they've been incredibly valuable, really. Right, we better sign off now. So thank you very much for watching this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club. You can learn more as ever and find all great episodes there, and even join us at ratherinventive.com/club. That's ratherinventive.com/club. Bye for now.